Hello everyone, my name is Tiffany, Jaye, and you guys know why we're here. So, this extraordinary, because that's the word that I've been seeing, this extraordinary woman, Miss Denise Mins-Harris, needs no introduction, but I have the pleasure of interviewing her here. She's a legend, and she has been dancing probably since before she could walk on her father's toes. So, Miss Denise, where are you from?
Okay, so I was born in New York, and I stayed there until I was in my mid-20s, and I was a dancer there. And then rumor had it that Broadway was about to bust open in LA. So I'm like, ooh, I want to be on the ground floor of that. And I picked up my jazz shoes and moved to LA. Broadway never busted open, but it was okay.
Okay.
I got into not having those snow-ins in the winter, no offense to anybody.
Right.
So I stayed and, built a family there.
Okay. So I'm going to try to go from, I guess, the beginning, and then we'll just go through, like, your entire life. So,
Oh, sure.
Can you tell us about, like, what schools you went to, the dances that you have under your belt? We'll go from there.
So it's an interesting story. When I was a teenager, the country was in a major upheaval, and the Black Panther Party was going really strong in New York and doing amazingly wonderful things in the community. And so I got involved as a teenager with the Black Panther Party. And it was very exciting, and it really came to have meaning to me about having a contributive life, And so there's the Black Panther Party and Dr. King and all those messengers, Malcolm X, and no, he's already died, but the messages were there, and so here I am at 14, running around. Helping to detox heroin addicts, which was a big plus of the Panther Party, and, feeding kids before they went to school, long before the government co-opted it, and the black students at Columbia University Med School were running free clinics long before the government co-opted it, and tutorials before and after school long before the government co-opted it, and taking actions, but as I was getting older, I now look at myself and say, girl, you were crazy. But I also began, hiding guns under my mattress.
What?
My dad didn't know what the hell I was doing. But there was a point when we were getting ready to take a big action against Columbia University because they were the largest slumlord in Harlem. And a 5-year-old child fell through an elevator shaft that they had refused to repair. Or I wouldn't even say they cared enough to refuse. They ignored the need to repair. And I had been integral in talking about and organizing for the action. And my dad thought I was going to school every day.
But you wasn't.
Well, I was getting schooled, but I wasn't in where they sent me. And that's another way to look at it. And but anyway, I had been scrapbooking all these articles that had talked about what we're doing and some quotes from me. And I went to my dad. And I'm like, you need to look at this. And he looks through it and he says, okay, what's up? And I said, well, you see there where it says the spokesperson, a youth spokesperson. I said, that's me. And he says, really? And I said, yeah. And don't try to stop me. I'm going to do this tomorrow, and I'll probably get arrested. And then you go.
Please no.
Dad was old school, and instead, he looked at me and he said, "I am so proud of you. I wish that this was happening when I was a youth, and if I have to mortgage you the house, you won't spend 5 minutes in jail. You're coming out." Awesome. So. But by 16, I began to get really fearful that either I I was going to get killed in the movement, or I may have to shoot somebody, because that was the level of the world in a way we were living in, mentally. And so there was this experimental college out on Long Island called College at Old Westbury, and they only admitted 20 students a year. It was their third year, so it was very revolutionary. And so at 16 in the 10th grade, I talked my way into college.
Amazing. Fascinating.
And the wonderful thing is that they had a dance department. So I continued to dance, and in my junior and senior year, they even hired me to teach as well.
What?
So so that continued. The dancing, and someone asked me yesterday, and I thought it was a great question, and it was something I didn't have to think about. But the question I was asked yesterday was, so your dancing was always tied to your activism? And I said, yeah, because it was through the dance that I released the rage. Right. And I was talking to Norma. I was with Norma Miller at her last birthday party in Los Angeles at Debbie Allen's house. And I said to Norma, I said, there's this tension among the black community in the Lindy world, and a kind of obliviousness to the tension among the white community in the Lindy world. And I said, I have my own points of view, but what is your point of view? Like, how you want me to respond to this? Because Norma had been my dad's dance partner. And she looked at me and she's like, racism created the Lindy Hop. And my jaw dropped. And I wanted to talk to her more about it, but then someone found out Al Min's daughter was here, and I spent the rest of the night taking pictures. Okay, it's fine. Because I had planned to see Norma at her 100th birthday party in November.
Yeah.
So I said, I'll finish this discussion with her, and of course she passed. But so it left me in a state of disequilibrium, like what did that mean? But then when I reflected on my own life and my father's life, I understood what that meant. That for if you're living in survival mode of what you have to deal with every day, and while my dad was this amazing genius of dance and incredibly articulate and self-taught, so many of the books I had to have in college, I grew up within my house, you know what I mean, about black people, 101 Amazing Facts About the Negro, and books by LaRon Bennett Jr., and it was just there and available to be absorbed, But as I understand his life, though, he spent a lot of his life pushing and fighting for the recognition that he deserved, as opposed to being some anthropological phenomena that a lot of the white academia wanted to make of what he did.
Right.
Like folk dancing. No.
It's not.
Right.
Exactly.
So, and it was also, having my dad and my mother as living examples of, they didn't have to tell me anything. I watched their life, as all kids do. And clearly, they were people who never accepted the status quo if it didn't match with their truth. My dad, here my mother is this Jewish woman whose family are survivors of the Holocaust, and my dad from this black wash your feet Baptist family who dancing is evil. And they met and they fell in love and they got married when it was illegal in most of this country. You know what I mean? And so I kind of grew up with a revolutionary kind of worldview. Like my friends' dads were going to the office or going to the factory, and they'd be like, "Where's your father?" "Oh, he's in Spain." "Oh, he's in Nigeria." "Oh, he's in London." So I grew up with a sense of my place in the world. And he told me as a very young child, he's like, "Don't ever let anybody tell you you're a minority." You are part of the majority of the world. And so just the kind of messages that came from him in and out of context. I mean, that minority majority
Right.
thing was just him walking in the living room one day and saying,
just
I need to
saying
tell
it.
you something. Okay. You know. So, yeah, so dance mattered a lot to me and was a major part of my life, is a major part of my life. But also, my dad, while, you know, he had me perform with him a few times, and then my love of dance expanded, and I studied African, and I studied jazz, and I studied Graham, and I studied Horton. He didn't want me to be a dancer.
Why not?
He said, Denise, you have this gift of gab, and you need to use it to make a difference in the world. And I took that to heart, and, you know, I didn't intentionally set out to do what I subsequently have done.
Yeah.
But, you know, I did grow into, fell into becoming a fundraiser. So now some of my clients are the NAACP, the Southern Poverty Law Center. I played an integral role in the fundraising for the Joe Biden Victory Fund. The Democratic National Committee is one of my clients. And so, you know, so he was right, you know.
Gift of gab.
Gift of gab. But also, people have always fascinated me, just people and human nature and people's lives. And I've always had an intolerance for suffering. Like, I was the kid who, after school, when they said fight, and everybody run to the fight, I'd go in the other direction. I didn't want to see it.
Yeah.
You know, and not that I couldn't. I once knocked a girl out in elementary school. I was like, she came up at me, and oh no.
You will not.
Down she went. Okay, so I got suspended. But, you know, you do what you got to do. And so that was the story of my education and dance and so on.
I love it. I got him. You gotta let me, cause I done did some research. I got it, y'all. Okay, so you kind of already spoke about it, but I'll just ask it.
Sure.
What does it mean for your father to reject the status quo? Tell me about that. What does that mean to you? And do you think we're still doing that today, or are we conforming to it?
You know, my father was just very clear about who he was and where his boundaries were.
Okay.
And what he was owed, because he had earned it, not because he was asking for a handout.
Right.
And so I think that, you know, sometimes money becomes the great corrupter. And so you sell off little bits and pieces of your integrity as an artist because the rent has to be paid, your kids' tuition has to be paid. And he never did. And sometimes, I mean, you know, after the 60s, as the, and early 70s, as the interest in, you know, vernacular jazz and Lindy Hop was diminishing on a wide scale in terms of, you know, like first time I saw Herschel Poppin', I was sitting next to him watching it in our living room, you know.
Beautiful, it's amazing.
And so as that diminished, he, you know, those kind of jobs were few and far between. And I once saw this interview where he talked about he'd done other work. No, the only thing my father ever did was dance. That's what he did. And so, but it became feast or famine. And I remember we were all really excited because it had been a famine period. And we were all really excited because he was going to meet with someone who wanted to pay him to choreograph a Broadway show. It was like, oh boy, it's back. Yeah. And then they told him that he couldn't put his name on it. And he told them, kiss my ass. And he came home and you know, and we're all like,
Did you?
what happened? What happened? He said, I told him to kiss my ass. And when he was coming close to the door, and we're like,
Wait,
what? And then, you know, he came out and explained to us what happened. And while some of us, he had 4 of us, while some of us were like, are you crazy? Do you see? And he's like,
but you gotta understand where.
but he role modeled that.
Yeah.
You know, he role modeled that, you know, your integrity can't be for sale.
I like that.
And taking it another step further, when you say, where are we going now? I think that the Black Lindy community is solidifying around that.
Okay.
In a very healthy way. And I'm so happy to be exposed to ISDC because it hasn't been Arthur Murray'd to death that it's lost its Black root. Mm-hmm. It's very what we are. It's sassy, it's sexy, it's everything we are,
yeah.
you know, and it's intricate. Mm-hmm. You can't just come in there playing with it. So, yeah, I'm really excited about that.
How did your father, do you know how your father became a dancer?
Yeah. So.
And that's Al Mins.
Yeah.
Because we did not, I mean, we said it, but we didn't.
Yeah. So my dad and grandmother, Maribi, had been living in Newport News, Virginia, and his father, David, had come up to New York. You know, it was the whole Great Migration.
Right.
And while he was sending money, he hadn't sent for them to come up yet. So my grandmother, being who she is, which was no joke, she's like, I need to go up to New York and see what's going on. So when she got up there, he was with this woman. And my grandmother said, oh, hell no, she wasn't putting up with it. So she took my father and they went and got a place. And she began doing, she was a wonderful hairstylist, and she was doing prostitutes' hair in her kitchen, 25 cents a head.
Okay.
And also picked up some domestic work on the side. And my dad, you know, there wasn't no playgrounds or summer camps for little Black kids back in the 30s. So he was hanging out in the streets with his friends, and they danced. And it's very similar to the whole breakdancing, hip-hop evolution. Like, that's where it started. And him and his buddies, at that time they weren't even doing Lindy Hop yet. They were doing Charleston and stuff like that. And they would dance on the corners and have their hat out and get money, and then they'd go work another corner. Nice. And just like with hip hop, they were exchanging steps and routines and what have you. And the genealogy of that's so interesting is that I may be skipping around, so you can just bring me back. But I have 3 sons. Okay. All of them have danced, but my middle son really mirrored my dad in that when he told me at like 6 that he was going to be a dancer, I made sure he had the most primo training available. So he's fully trained in ballet, jazz, tap, hip hop, African, flamenco, and aerial, Cirque du Soleil. Wow. And but since he announced to me that he's not going to college, and he put his foot down, which drove me and his father insane. But then I said to him, okay, then you have to go to the Alonzo King Lyons Ballet Summer Intensive and tighten your technique. And so he spent a month in San Francisco, Alonzo King's preeminent Black ballet company. And then when we went up there, they spent 3 days begging my husband to convince my son, who's here at this event, to become an apprentice in their pre-professional ballet company. Okay. Meanwhile, I'm getting calls from Kevin, my son, that he's holding hip hop classes in the lobby because he's going through hip hop detox. But it's okay. So it's so amazing to me that my father was a street dancer towards professionalism, and my son is a street dancer
Right.
towards professionalism. And you know, and that's what my son does. He opened his own studio in Mesquite, which is right outside of Dallas, in September. And he's won international, national, regional, and state awards for his choreography and competing himself. And that's really cool. And then my youngest son, Wayne was on Broadway in his junior year of college in a show called The Prom.
Okay.
It has 7 Tony nominations. He was an amazing dancer in it. And then my grandson, Kari, he's won. He had his first dance recital last month. So,
Precious. One.
no, he outdanced all of the older girls too. They didn't know the choreo. He had it nailed. I was
In
so
the
happy.
blood. Wow.
Yeah, the legacy continues.
Of course. Savoys. Do you see anything like that today?
The Savoy?
Mm-hmm.
No,
That was it. Simple. All right.
no. And well, you know, you can't divorce, in my opinion, you can't divorce the Savoy from the bands.
Ah.
So, you know, it's like the story my dad tells is how it was actually the dancers who auditioned the bands.
Right.
So the
okay.
bands would come to the Savoy, and he told me, he said, the first time Duke Ellington came, we were like, what is that shit? Get out of here. I hope I can say that. Get out of here. But Count Basie was the man. The next time Duke Ellington came, he came right, you know. So it was this interaction and interplay between the bands and the dancers, and also just the physical build, how the Savoy was built. My dad says that, you know, a sprung floor. Do you know what sprung floor is?
Yes. So. Yep.
Yeah. He's like, you
It
barely
adds-
had
and
to
that's-
dance because you sprung.
So that answers the question because I was trying to figure out. But in Hells a Poppin', you were saying it's concrete.
They danced on concrete,
So
shin splints. I mean, you know, but you know, and not only that, but for those who don't know, the way Hells a Poppin', that scene was created. Maybe as black people, we don't connect the dots that all those dancers were laborers. You know, you didn't see nobody coming in there with a briefcase and putting it down and swinging. They were all like manual laborers. And the scene was just dropped in the movie because there were some states, particularly in the South, that when the movie got played, that scene was extracted. So that they're like, black folks don't exist. Or we're not gonna make you look at them. It's a very interesting story, but you know, I mean, it was Whitey's Lindy Hoppers. It put them on the map, and you know, it's really interesting because I'm very close to Fayard Nicholas's family.
okay, is this Nicholas brothers?
The Nicholas
okay,
brothers,
That's what
yeah.
I want. Okay.
Particularly his granddaughters, Kathy and Nicole, and actually Kathy and Kevin trained together under Debbie, and you know, you look at the phenomenal work that they did, and the amazing work my dad did, and the sad thing is that once they discovered white dancers who could do it, then that was just job loss. So I get so conflicted with appreciation and cynicism,
Right.
you know, because it's like, yeah, okay, you're doing it, but you cost a lot of people jobs. I met Jean, I think her last name is Vos. She's a white woman who did a lot of amazing Lindy Hop stunts in the movies. And when I met her, she was, you know, very excited to meet me, and looked me dead in the face and said, you know, until I met Frankie Manning, I thought white people created the Lindy Hop. This is the 20th century.
And even
What
still.
is what are we not doing?
Right.
That kind of misinformation or lack of education. And I was mentioning yesterday. I said, if it's like the privilege of being ignorant.
You already know.
When you study European art or African drums, two extremes, right? But you don't just go and look at a Van Gogh painting. If you're studying art, you immerse yourself in understanding who was Van Gogh and what inspired him, and you learn everything you can about that kind of art. And when you're doing African drumming, it ain't just beating a rhythm. You know what every rhythm means and what the genesis of that rhythm is and what the outgrowth of that rhythm is. And we're even now discovering about our own unique, beautiful hair braiding were maps to freedom and slavery. I mean, like,
I didn't even know that.
yeah. So the point is that group of people who say, well, can't we just dance? Do I have to know all of this? Yeah, you got to know all of it because it's not yours. And it's a matter of respect and curiosity. Why aren't you curious? Why don't you want to know? You don't want to know because your privilege says you don't have to. And that's why we have to take back and own what's ours, because it's ours. And we shouldn't be shy. We should be like belligerent and privileged as they are.
Yeah, right, exactly. Hence why your dad didn't take.
Yeah.
Integrity's not for sale.
Yeah. And the older I get, the more I realize how much I mirror him, which is fine.
Very much. There's so many things. How did you get connected with Debbie Allen? What was that like?
So Kevin, my middle child, he was in this this Buddhist, multicultural, multiracial hip hop group called Rhythm Nation, and they were amazing. And he was like, I don't know, he was like 7 when he started with them. And then, but now he was a teen, and we were driving home from rehearsal, and Debbie was being interviewed on the radio about this academy she's opening up and how you have to audition. So I looked at Kevin and I said, do you know who Debbie Allen is? No. So I told him, I said, you want to try? She's like, yeah, let's go. Cool. So we went over and he got accepted. And at that time, it was a year before 9/11. I had just opened my own business. I had like 35 fundraisers. It was going well. All very progressive advocacy type groups. And and I was, I'm one of those volunteer parents, active and visible. And then Kevin was doing great. He was taking 20 hours of dance a week. And because that's how you roll when you roll with Debbie, period. and I loved it. And it felt very New York and LA, which I loved. And but then 9/11 happened, and all the nonprofits that were progressive got brain freeze, and they stopped all fundraising. And so for 18 months, I had no clients. And, while everyone, the landlord, the phone company, everyone was saying, Denise, we believe in what you're doing. You're one of our larger clients. We'll hold you. Like, this hole is getting too deep. I'll never get out. So I shut the doors. And when I shut the doors, and then my husband's business closed too, which was crazy. And so when I shut the doors, that meant he had to stop. Because, interestingly, it never even, this is how my wiring is, it never even occurred to me to ask for a scholarship. It was just like, if I can't pay, I ain't going.
Right.
More of that damn belligerence from my father. So then Kevin was taking his driving test.
Right.
And I'm sitting in the DMV, and Norm Nixon, Debbie's husband, comes popping over, and he's like, hey, where's Kevin? I said, he's over there taking the driving test. I didn't even get what he was talking about. And then Debbie comes over and flops down next to me, and she's like, where's Kevin? I said, he's over there taking the driving test. And she said, well, Kevin should be with me. And I'm like, yeah, but I ain't got no money for that. And she says, no, but you have skills I need. Why don't you come work for me and let's put Kevin back in school? And that's what happened. And we became really linked in the development and growth of that academy. And Kevin became one of her closest mentees. He produced 9 shows with her, you know. And you know, what you see on TV, that's who she is. That's not an act. She's warm and bubbly and crazy and strict and, you know. I've seen Debbie walk up to a kid over here and pop him in the back of the head and say, focus! So, yeah. So I was there for 15 years. And then I returned to being a fundraiser full time.
Very good. I like it.
Yeah.
Let's list some of those. I think you already listed your organizations, right? I believe you did.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of, sort of.
Those, and then, you know, and then there's also the LA Zoo and the UN High Commission for Refugees. I'm learning all about the Afghan and Syria and Yemen and all that stuff I haven't paid attention to, about internationally what's happening, but I feel like there's an energy going across the world right now that is very repressive. And this country, which was once the beacon of opposition to that, is actually beginning to export that. I ran into a woman from Denmark, of all places, and she's like, what is happening in your country? And this is when Trump was in office. And I said, don't worry, it was a mistake. It will be corrected the next election. And she said, there's a man just like him running for president of my country, and he's winning. And she says, do you understand the impact America has internationally? Well, I was so focused on the impact America has on us that I didn't care. That's just a fact. That was my privilege showing. So now I've taken on looking up a little bit more and out a little bit more, because I think it's important to have a contributive life, whether you're contributing through the arts or education or fundraising, whatever you do, like, make a damn difference.
Right.
And I think that through that you find community and like-minded people.
Cool. Sounds like one of your most memorable quotes are, whatever you do, don't be common. Please try to be extraordinary.
Oh, that was another of those things of my dad. His thing was, don't be common, be extraordinary.
What's that mean?
Well, there were different examples at different stages of my life. I mean, as a little girl, I'd be out in the streets playing loud, and he'd come to the door. Denise, come inside. Hey, Papa, what's up? Don't be out there sounding common. Don't be common. Then, okay, so that was that, like, take it down.
Right.
Then I was a teenager, and I didn't know he'd flown back in from wherever he was the night before. And so I had a skirt, and I rolled it all up because I was going to go mini skirting that day. And I did my hair some kind of wild way, and I put on eyeliner. It wasn't a line, it was a damn fence. I mean, and I thought I was fly. And I was, where was I going? Going to school? I was going somewhere. Anyway, he saw me, he's like, Denise. So I was like, ah. He said, sit down. I'm like, but I, sit down. And we went to the corner store and he got a copy of Vogue magazine. And he put it in front of me. And he's like, this is what class looks like.
Ooh.
Don't be common, be extraordinary. So I never did that kind of stuff again. I mean, I learned that class is more sexier than blatancy. And I learned that from him.
Damn.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah. He used to say that stuff. But, like, that's kind of, that's the kind of lugs that you don't forget. And so you find yourself passing that kind of message on, like sagging.
Okay, we don't have to speak on it.
Yeah.
Where do you see? I don't know where I want to go. Because you've already spoken on everything I said. Where do you see dance in the next 5 to 20 years? With your influence and everything that your family has done, and continue to do.
Well, dance has to evolve, yeah? The ballet of the 21st century is not the ballet of, 1930s. Right. So dance has to evolve, but there were some core things it should never lose. I think, you look at ISDC and you look at Lindy Hop, and the Lindy community has to take back what's theirs because it's become Arthur Murray'd and ballroomed to death. And I shiver sometimes. But I see the force being taken back. And I was making an analogy today that in the discussion sometimes you have those who speak with a feeling of, everything in moderation, don't bite the hand that feeds you, and then you have that group like, AOC, like, to hell with that, do it now, take it down rather than let it go. And I don't have a side in that fight. I just think it's important that the discussion's being had, and that the efforts are being made, and that the recognition that there does need to be change, and that I was fascinated, particularly the Lindy community in the United States during the quarantine, just how much self-reflection was going on social media, and people. I remember I said I was doing this talk at Lincoln Center in New York about my dad, and I said to them, I said, I don't understand at first the lack of black participation. And then I figured it out. I said, if a black kid got a registration form for this, he can't afford these festivals. And if my dad had to pay to learn this, you would have lost his genius and contribution. Yeah. So the way you've set this up, it is denying the very people who created this art form access. I said, the other thing is, I look at your costumes, I know how much those dresses cost. I know how much those shoes cost, But if a black kid walked in there and saw a room full of 50 white couples, all dressed to the nines, in a style they don't even know where to find it, if they even want to, because black folks are very, very fashion conscious, and they don't want to be made to feel like they're out of fashion when they're really in fashion. I said, there's so many things going on. And and this is going to answer your question, I promise.
No, okay.
But I was on social media, and I saw this ad that said, come learn the Al Minns and Leon James Shim Sham. And those cartoons where they show the head go up and explode and the eyes, I was like,
What?
And I went tracking down, asking all kinds of people in the community, who are these people? How do I find them? And so I eventually connected, and we had a little Zoom call. And I said, listen, I got to tell you, my father's grandchildren, and he has them through 4 kids, they want me to copyright everything of his. I mean, I've been to events where they're selling T-shirts with his likeness on it. But anyway, let's stick with this Shim Sham thing. And I said to him,